China is likely to come out of this in a stronger position, and the U.S. is likely to come out of this in a weaker position. This may drive the U.S. and China more deeply into a new Cold War.
The coronavirus pandemic is changing far more than just the way we live. It is also changing the global balance of power. While the rest of the world is still in crisis, China has already controlled its outbreak, or so it says, and appears to be on the road to recovery. By the time the dust settles in the West, Beijing could emerge with a new place on the international stage. The country finds itself in a unique situation. It can restart its economy and make amends at home, but also offer a helping hand to other countries in dire need.
This pandemic has now become China's geopolitical opportunity. And certainly the opportunity would be if China would like to be the world leader, a respected world leader in terms of global governance. And this is perhaps the time for China to set up the agenda. This is all beginning with this whole notion of the so-called discursive power China is trying to project. Discursive power, it is for a particular country to be able to shape the international debate from the very beginning of the issue. So whoever started first, who is the initiator, and therefore that particular person or entity, it is the agenda setter. And China is inclined to become that agenda setter.
As other nations descended into lockdown, with health services strained to the limit, China offered much needed help in the form of medical care packages. Shipments of Chinese ventilators, masks, and protective equipment arrived all around the world. China also contributed scientific muscle to international efforts to find a cure and a vaccine for the virus.
I think just by encouraging the weakening of those Western ties through a combination of kind of carrots and sticks. Again, if you look at the Canadian example, they've punished the Canadians terribly, but now, suddenly they're turning around and in the current crisis being friendlier towards Canada, offering them aid and assistance. And I think you're going to see China play the same sort of stick and carrot game that the United States has played for years. I mean, no other country used to be able to do that. And China now has both the capacity and it seems increasingly the vision to start to play the international game in that way.
China's sort of incredibly prominent position is one where it isn't really able to do what it could, because while its economy makes great sense, politically, of course, it really isn't persuasive to the outside world. And I think China knows that. And I don't think it would serve its purposes to look like it had the upper hand, because that looks too designed. I think it's got to make it clear that it wants to work with others.
Meanwhile, the United States maintained its America First approach. Donald Trump announced a ban on international flights from Europe without any advance warning to European officials. He's also insisted on referring to COVID-19 as the Chinese virus, in an attempt to focus blame for the outbreak on the Chinese government.
By announcing some important developments in our war against the Chinese virus.
The international cooperation has not been, at the moment, particularly great. That there's been a failure of leadership, particularly by the US, and therefore China's got this potential opportunity to fill some of that void.
I mean, for one thing, the US reputation for competence in a crisis has been totally shattered. Secondly, you just have, within the Western alliance, further fragmentation. I think the Chinese are eager to take advantage of the weakening in the Western alliance, and that will be to the benefit of China going forward. I think there's no question about that.
This could lead to deeper cooperation and sense prevailing, or it could be the big divide. And at the moment, we are standing just, on the crossroads, looking in either direction. And a lot of it does depend on how China behaves. It's going to be in the leadership, in some ways, in shaping which of those kind of paths we go along.
What I worry is not so much that China is somehow going to overtake the United States suddenly. U.S. has still too many intrinsic strengths, but that we are moving very rapidly from a period of fairly good U.S.-Chinese cooperation really into a period of a much more conflictual relationship.